Three, two, one. Hey everybody, welcome to another rendition of the Game Addicted Show, covering once again some college football rankings. And oh boy, do we have some big changes leading up to the release of the playoff committee coming up on, I believe, let's see here, November 2nd. Yeah. So we are 2 weeks away from that, and it'll be very interesting to see how different what I'm producing here will be compared to the playoff committee. And as we're seeing again, these rankings getting awfully close to what the AP polls are showing, and make some good variations on some teams where I think there's some teams maybe a little overrated and some that again are being very underappreciated. So, anyways, if you're new to this channel, make sure to give me a follow on Twitch if you're watching me on YouTube, and if you're watching me on Twitch, just Twitch. This is my main platform. If you ever want to see any old videos past the 14-day mark of me covering college sports or gaming or anything else, feel free to check out my YouTube channel by the same name, The Game Addicted Show, all one word. And yeah, we will be having some fun there. But yeah, this is the best platform, I feel, for covering college sports. We could have live discussions. We've had people drop by, but no one's really asking any questions. Guys, drop by. Give me some questions. Give me something to talk about, or else I'm just going to just keep plowing through these and keep, ripping on the SEC and whatnot. But without further ado, let's jump into this week's rankings, shall we? Okay. Starting at number 25. The AP polls, we actually have Purdue, which I want to take a moment to talk about. I don't have Purdue in our top 25. And you might be wondering, why would you have, let's say, Fresno State, in this case, number 25, versus Purdue, who just have a massive, massive win against Iowa. And remember, Iowa was very well respected in our rankings here. So, though it was a major win, and I've been saying for weeks, Purdue is not a bad school. Anytime anybody's played them, when they lose against them or they beat them, I always either I always see the praise Purdue because I'm like I've seen the school live and I'm looking at the stats and they are not bad at all. And let's jump into Purdue here. Yeah, they're ranked 35 here. They're ranked number 34 in their VPI rankings. And look, strength of schedule is amazing. Top 25, number 12, in fact, for strength of schedule. Strength of production, not so much. Middle of the road. The teams they're playing don't have either the best offensive defense. They're average offensive defenses. They're not bad by any sense, but when you look at their wins, they have obviously a huge win over Iowa. But then, their wins consist of Illinois, which is not a great school, 2-5. Uconn, which is the second worst school in college football right now, at 1-7, and their only win, mind you, is over Division II schools. So, and they have a solid win over Oregon State. Oregon State, another solid team. But I'm not saying Purdue doesn't take ranks, but when you compare their resume to some of the schools we're going to be looking into, you'll see that yeah, they'll get there if they continue to win. And I don't want to dismiss the win; it was massive. But look at it this way: if you were to have a team with a 500 record, all of a sudden have a massive win, let's say the team that was like 4-4, and then they have a massive win, do you automatically put them in the top 25? No, you look at the rest of my resume. Same thing here with Purdue. Even though they're over 500, and it was a massive, massive win, you can't dismiss the rest of their schedule. Had they beat, maybe Minnesota, or especially Notre Dame, I think easy top 25, like no brainer. But yeah, it's lacking in some parts. But again, great, great. I'm not going to dismiss the win. I've been respecting Purdue all season. And yeah, in our VPI rankings, they will be in the top 25 pretty soon if they continue to go this route. I totally believe that. And also understand, when we're looking at Purdue, let's see. I'm curious to see how. We'll pull that up later. I was going to see what their production index, or sorry, their VPI ranking is, which I do not have here. I should have that available. In fact, let's remove this filter for 1 minute. Clear filter. Yeah, Purdue is 0.15. And then let's go back Fresno State's .19. So, I mean, there really isn't that big of a difference between their VPI rankings. With those numbers may not make sense to you, but just know that we're talking about a fraction of a difference between them and the, 9 other teams in front of them. There's not a huge difference. So, yeah, Purdue, great team, and look forward to what they do, because the Big Ten is a tough conference. In fact, let's check out another thing. I did not check to see. Yeah, the SEC, not by much, but they are still the top conference, followed by the Big Ten, Big 12, number 3, the ACC, the Mountain West, the American Athletic Conference, followed by the Pac-12. Pac-12, again, having a terrible year. You're getting beat by the Mountain West and American Athletic Conference, and that's only the Pac-12 right now is only better than the Sun Belt, the Independence, which isn't a conference, but as a whole, the MAC and the Conference USA. That's the only teams the Pac-12 is better than. But my God, the Pac-12 is having a bad year. But yeah, Big Ten Conference, just absolutely killing it. Oh boy! All right, we'll jump into Pac-12 in just a minute, but all right, so going to number 25 here, Fresno State. Fresno State has been lacking for my rankings, and again, with smaller schools, when you have a very weak strength schedule, which they do, 114 at 130 schools. Same thing with strength production, very weak strength production, 123 out of 130 schools. It's a very slow climb to the top, and honestly, what pushed them over is that win over Wyoming, which is a solid school, But other than that, look at the rest of their strength schedule. Like you're looking at UNLV, which is 0-6. They played Uconn, again, the second worst school in college football. They lost to Oregon, which we'll get into a little bit. Hawaii losing record. So Wyoming and UCLA, which really helped them out, that usually beat Washington, helped give them a boost. I think ultimately the combination of those two things happening, with usually beating Washington and Wyoming, beating Wyoming, I think that's really what barely gets them into the top 25 here. They're not in the AP polls, and I totally understand why. I'm not. I don't think there's a dissimilar thought there, but just looking at the stats alone, yeah, I barely gets in the top 25 here with Fresno State. Moving on to number 24. Interesting here. We'll talk about the AP polls first. And we'll get to University of Texas San Antonio a little bit later, but University of Texas San Antonio barely got into the top 25, and BYU is kicked out, where here in our VPI rankings, we actually have BYU at number 24. And I think the voters were being a little too harsh with BYU, because let's look at some of the team they lost to was Baylor. That's ultimately got kicked them out, right? That was a bad loss against Boise State. Really dropped the ball there. But Baylor is a really good school, both ranked here in the VPI rankings and in the AP polls. And look at some of the, I know Arizona's a terrible school, still a Power 5 conference, right? Utah, really good school, who just went on to beat Arizona State, right? They also beat Arizona State. They beat, South Florida, Utah State. But, I mean, the first 3 games you played this season are against Power 5 schools, and you lose against a really good Power 5 school, a 6-1 Baylor. So I think that they're being very harsh towards BYU. I don't think BYU should have dropped out of the top 25. I'm sure if they win maybe next week or the following week. I think next week, who does BYU have next week? I'll have to look it up later, but I think it's Arkansas State, if I'm not mistaken. But then they jump into some tough matches where they still have, I believe, Washington State, USC. So they have still some tough games left in the schedule. So yeah, maybe not Washington State so much, but BYU should definitely still be in the top 25. I think they're being, just because they're a smaller school, they're being very critical of them, and I don't believe that's fair to the Cougs. Really disappointed, though. I really thought that with this schedule, they had a shot at the playoffs had they not dropped the ball against Boise State. And yeah, this loss against Baylor basically buried them. So not even a New Year's Six bowl at this point. But still, I think they're still having a tremendous season. Still a lot of football left to play, and plenty of time for them to continue to climb up the ranks. But yeah, let's jump into probably one of the most controversial picks here. Maybe not so much. I just mentioned earlier how the Pac-12 is just absolutely having a terrible, terrible year this year. And we have Oregon here, who struggled to beat a 1-5 California school, right? Now, they actually, last week, they were number 25 in our rankings. Today, they moved up to number 23. Or maybe they're number 24, moving to 23. I'll have to check. But either way, they moved up either a spot or two here. And funny enough, in the AP polls, they dropped from number 9 to number 10, right? So seems to be a similar direction in thought. I think that Oregon is very overrated. Let's just look at some of some of the stats here. Look at the strength schedule, 110, right? And yeah, I mean, when you play Cal and you struggle to beat the 1-5 school, that's not going to look good. Not to mention your strength of production, middle of the road on the wrong side of that road, by the way, with ranked number 78. Look at their wins here. I mean, they lost to Stanford, which that loss is looking worse and worse as Stanford continues to lose games. You beat Arizona, who's hasn't won a game. You beat Division II school, which again I treat as the worst school in college football. I treat all FCS schools the same. Yes, you had that huge win over Ohio State. Yes, now that Fresno State was starting to look better, but your rest of your resume looks really, really bad. And I just, you could rank them higher because you think they're more talented or better coach, whatever it is. But these rankings are strictly databased with me, and there is nothing on their resume to justify a top 10 team. I said this last week and even the previous week. Oregon has no business being a top 10 school. They really don't. And, I mean, maybe they continue to win. They have a huge chance against UCLA, who I have number 28 here in the VPI rankings, which isn't showing up here, but I'm only showing the top 25. But, yeah, maybe that'll give them a nice boost if they win that game, which I don't think is going to be an easy win. Let me jump into some stats there just because, I'm a huge UCLA fan, so we'll take a little more time with that, right? So look at this. 51 in offense, 88 in defense, right? Terrible strength schedule, 110, and terrible strength of production. Well, not terrible, middle of the road strength production, right? Let's look at their opponent, UCLA, which is only a fraction behind them. Ranked number 28 here in the VPI rankings, right? Similar record. But look at the difference. UCLA has a strength of schedule of top 25. They're number 24. Strength production, which is your opponent's total offense, total defense, ranked number 28. Offense, one spot behind. Oregon's 51. UCLA's 52. Defense, 20 spots ahead with UCLA at 68 versus Oregon 88. So you might be thinking, well, their production of UCLA is pretty similar. But the difference is that UCLA is doing that against way tougher competition, right? Even though Ohio State's a better team than LSU, those two games aren't too dissimilar, right? Obviously Ohio State would be the bigger win there. And then you have UCLA, who lost to Arizona State, where Arizona State would be obviously a better team than Stanford, right? Fresno State, that was a close game. Still not bad to lose against a 6-1 school, right? Versus again Oregon, who lost against a 3-4 school, Stanford, who might continue to lose. They really don't look like they're going to be recovering anytime soon. So you look at that. You look at some of the other wins UCLA has, right? They did beat Stanford, the team that beat Oregon. Still, they both played Arizona. Washington, better team than Cal. And Hawaii, which is a better team than Division II school, right? We could agree on that. So looking at all of this, even though they have a similar resume on a lot of these games, huge difference in strength of schedule and strength of production of those teams. So if UCLA is putting up these type of numbers against a tougher schedule, then you have to believe that they would have the advantage of this game. I'm not going to make any predictions here because I never like to predict for the team you root for, and obviously I'm a big UCLA fan, so I don't want to jinx it, but stats are showing they look really, really good going into that game. And again, I just, not only in a personal opinion, but also just the stats alone, I just think Oregon is very, very overrated. There's just nothing to support them being a top 10 team, So yeah, that's my thoughts on Oregon. A lot long-winded there. Moving on to number 22 with Texas A&M. Texas A&M, definitely deserving to be in the top 25. Obviously, that win over Alabama really, does put them up there. Ranked 5 spots ahead at number 17, the AP polls. Not not dissimilar train of thought here. I could definitely see that. Look at strength of schedule number 19, strength of production number 14. So they are playing just like UCLA, a very brutal schedule, and the Arkansas's loss is obviously looking a little worse. Same thing with the Mississippi State losses. Those two losses which really hurting them here in our VPI rankings. That's why I ranked a little lower. But I'm not really going to split hairs. I know it's only, 5 spots is significant when you get into the top 25 rankings. But I don't blame the AP polls for putting them as high as they do. Are they a little overrated? Yeah, possibly. But if they continue to win, if they beat Alabama, I'm sure they'll have a few more upsets come through schedule. So yeah, we'll see what happens to Texas A&M. So yeah, I'm not, I like to be critical of the SEC because a lot of times I do think they're overrated, and this might be a case, but this isn't the hill I'm willing to die on. I think it's fair enough to rank Texas A&M number 17. I just think the SEC constantly is given the benefit of the doubt, and they're always being pushed a little further than I think they should, especially with Florida. Oh, don't even get me started on them. Luckily, they're not in their top 25. Now, here's a team, again, that wasn't ranked and got into the top 25. Number 23 in the AP polls and number 21 here with their VPI rankings. And it all comes down to just accumulating wins. The strength of schedule, pretty weak. Strength of production, not the worst. And I think they essentially have a lot of middle-of-the-road wins. Obviously, losing against some, tough competition with Western Michigan, which is better than a lot of people think. But not much to say about the schedule here. Again, strength of schedule, 100. So just accumulating a lot of wins. And, wins have value. The more you accumulate, the better. The slowly, you're going to slowly climb the ranks. But if you lose a game when you have this type of schedule, you plummet, and you plummet hard. So it's a very fine line you thread when you have weak strength of schedule and you're just accumulating wins, especially to see some of the small schools get into. But fair ranking, I think 2-spot difference. I'm saying they're a little underrated, but not going to split hairs here. Jumping into Air Force. Air Force is not ranked in the top 25 AP polls. Not too dissimilar from what you see with Pittsburgh. Again, weak strength of schedule, 94, strength of production, 102. No real big signature wins. The biggest win of the season looking to be against Wyoming, which is, not a bad school. But yeah, not much to say against here with the Air Force. Top 20. Deserving. I think so. Should be in the top 25, I think. If for the AP polls, who would I boot off? Auburn. Well, I guess we can jump into them a little bit later. Even though Auburn had a big win this past weekend. Now, last week, I was really explaining the importance of Coastal Carolina in these rankings and how it ties into a lot of other teams, because Coastal Carolina, look at this, total offense, number 2 in the nation. Total defense, number 6, right? Those stats would have you believe, and they're undefeated, 6-0. The stats would have you believe, man, these guys are a powerhouse, totally deserving to be, number 14. Well, they actually dropped in the rankings, and I think they'll continue to drop because, again, this is all data-driven with me. There's no personal opinion here. And as we get further and further into the season, if you keep playing against weak opponents, they're playing the Sun Belt Conference, they dropped a few spots in our rankings. I think they dropped from 17 to number 19 this week. And that's going to continue to happen because, it is a slow climb up, but you're going to hit a plateau. And if you don't start playing against tougher competition, other teams that have losses are going to start to leap you. And that's what you're starting to see happen here. So, as again, I always mention, as we get more and more data going through these rankings, things start to kind of balance themselves out. So you're going to start seeing teams start to shift downward if they play weaker strength schedule, and upward if you're winning tough games. It's going to have more of an impact down the road. So things are starting to adjust. I think you're going to see more cases of teams that are winning and dropping because it's so tight late in the season compared to vice versa. So, but yeah, Coastal Carolina, definitely top 25 team. Just, they're going to continue to drop because they're playing a really, really weak opponents, and they should not be rewarded for that. And we'll compare that to a few other teams coming up on here. Jumping into Baylor, who I mentioned earlier had a big win over BYU. Solid cross-board, strength schedule number 73, strength production, maybe not as good as 89. Look at their total offense, top 25, number 17. I did not know that. 37, really had built to be, really a big thorn in the Big 12 conference, and I think has a good shot maybe against Oklahoma. Oklahoma, very suspect this season. I think they've had a lot of close games. Should have lost that Texas game. I called that game. I said Texas was going to pull the upset there, but not much more to say other than I think they're very closely ranked. They're at number 18 here, number 20 in the AP polls. Again, we're not going to split hairs here. Fair rankings. I think Baylor is on their way if they continue to win. Again, the Big 12 Conference is the third best conference so far this season. So plenty of respect for the Baylor Bears. And the more it look at it, the more I think the Big 12 will have one team in the playoffs. I know earlier everyone's kind of hanging their hats on Oklahoma, but Baylor's climbing up, which, I mean, it's a long shot with Baylor. But, we'll talk about another team in the Big 12 that maybe a little more deserving than you think. Next, jump into a very controversial ranking here with Penn State. And even though Penn State had a bye week, they continue to drop in their rankings. And this kind of shows how the magic of how this formula works, because they dropped, obviously, because teams around them were winning and losing. But the other part of it is because their one loss against Iowa, which, again, Iowa was ranked number 3 on here last week. But Iowa also lost. So that hurt Penn State indirectly because, again, this formula accounts for your opponents, which accounts for 2/3 of your score, and your opponents, which counts for 1/3 of your score. So them losing really hurts Penn State, and everything else Penn State's resume, solid. I think their biggest win of the season was against Auburn. Wisconsin, I think, is, pretty underrated because I think they've had a brutal strength schedule. And, other than that, there really hasn't been any signature wins. So, I mean, based off the resume, you're really hanging your hat on the Auburn win to put Penn State at number 7. But if you're looking at this, had they beat Iowa, easily, number 1 or 2 or 3 this season, or, these rankings here. But if you're just looking at their resume, outside of Auburn, which is a solid school, really not much to hang your hat on to here. And again, I'm even saying Auburn is a bit overrated. In fact, let's just take a quick look at Auburn. Not by much, though. If we look at Auburn, we're saying they're ranked number 30, where in the AP polls they have number 19. But if you look at Auburn, they lost to Georgia, team they didn't expect to lose. Lost to Penn State, game they're expected to lose. But, Arkansas was a good win. LSU was a good win. Yeah, they're good. Yeah, I'm not going to knock Auburn too much. I was knocking them earlier in the season. But they're not, they should be on their way. I just think they're a bit overrated right now, looking at these stats. Let's jump into a team that's not in our VPI rankings, just because I'm curious, with NC State. NC State, look at that, is ranked number 18 in the AP polls. We have them number 26. We're just one smidge. That's our top 25. And just, again, a team, look at their strength schedule is really weak. Strength of production, really weak. Just racking up a bunch of mediocre wins, really, really weak wins as a whole. And even when they're strongest, I mean, they beat Clemson, which is obviously a great win. And even Clemson just having a bad year. Just my thoughts on NC State. Should not be ranked at the. I mean, should be maybe next week, but as of right now, I really can't say they should be ranked. Speaking of overrated teams, going into Ole Miss. Ole Miss ranked number 12, 4-spot difference. I I guess I'm just being a little harsh because I don't like Lane Kiffin, but that was a solid win over Tennessee, a team that they almost lost to, really almost blew that game. Um, yeah, solid strength schedule, right in the middle of the road. Strength production though, the teams that they're placing, beating, have really really great production. They're number 17 overall, which means the defenses and total offenses combined of the teams they're playing are really really tough. That's what that stat means, strength production, and their opponents as well. Combining all of that, that's the impressive stat, and that's what gives them number 16 ranking here. Obviously, solid wins over Arkansas, who just lost, and I think that's what hurts them. But as well, in Tennessee, yeah, those are your 2 wins they're hanging their hats on. So, am I saying they're overrated? Well, let's look at the teams ahead of them and really decide that for yourselves. So, yeah, nothing much more to say than Ole Miss is doing okay. Now, this is where it gets interesting, right? So, earlier we mentioned the importance of Coastal Carolina, who's ranked number 14, right, in the AP polls, ranked number 19 with us, right, 19? Yeah, 19 was, just want to make sure before I get, destroyed in the comment section. But SMU, who has basically the same, strength of schedule, strength of production, right, 130, 125 versus Coastal Carolina, 129, 130, so only slightly better, right? And they both are undefeated. So if they're both playing similar strength of schedule and they're both undefeated, why? But SMU plays in a bigger conference. I think we could all agree American Athletic Conference is a bigger conference than the Sun Belt. Why would SMU be ranked, 7 spots lower? Like, how does that make sense? This is what the VPA rankings do a really good job of questioning. Why would you? What is the logic behind that? Obviously they're beating up on really weak schools. 1-5 Navy, 1-5 Florida, South Florida, 1-5 North Texas, a Division II school, right? But in Louisiana Tech, TCU, where you're saying Coastal Carolina, look at this, 1-5. Yeah, you're only going based off 2 games. Maybe UL Monroe and Buffalo, but really, again, strength schedule is crap. Strength production is crap. So how do you justify? I don't know. Maybe it's their total total defense, which is really impressive. I'm not going to knock that. Maybe it's that, but there really isn't much logic to say that Coastal Carolina should be ranked against SMU and some of the other teams we're going to cover right now. But yeah, I think the VPI ranks do a really good job of pointing out some discrepancies here. Also, it also points out some interesting scenarios with some powerhouse schools. You might think in Alabama, how the heck would the number 4th ranked AP team be number 14, 10 spots back exactly? They moved up 3 spots here, but from where they were last week. And Alabama, playing some tough opponents, playing number 22 in strength production. Strength schedule, a bit on the weaker side, but obviously getting better, especially compared to what we were looking at last week. Had a solid win over a 3-3 Mississippi State there. Mississippi State team. Just twisting my words there. There with coming off that loss against Texas A&M. It's really we'll look at the teams ahead of them, and some of them you might go cringe and go, how the heck is that possible that some of these teams are ranked ahead of them, and how is Alabama's ranked so low here? But it's looking at everything else that Alabama has done, right? They had not the worst, not a bad loss against Texas A&M, which again we're seeing is top 25 school, beating up on an okay Mississippi State, a really good win over Ole Miss. Florida struggling, not bad. Playing Division II school, which really hurts them. Playing Miami. Playing a really bad Southern Mississippi school. Kind of a mixed bag here. And that's what their strength schedule, I think, is a fair strength schedule that Alabama has here. But we'll look at the teams ahead of them. And Alabama will continue to rise up the ranks. But we're saying their resume compared to some of the teams ahead of them, it's a really tight in the top, 25. You have to remember, when you look at this, look at the perspective of, we're ranking teams in order from 1 to 130, not just 1 through 25. So when you look at the pecking order from that perspective, it'll give you a better insight of how this is all being calculated. And we'll look at the team completely different, and this is probably going to upset some people. Look, you're saying Alabama, SEC, 6-1, being some tough opponents, and yeah, they definitely deserve to be continuing to climb the ranks. But what differentiates that between a 7-0 UTSA? The difference is that I was mentioned is that each win has value. University of Texas San Antonio is being rewarded for being undefeated, for having one additional win, and yeah, compare that to strength production, it'd be absolutely ludicrous to rank UTSA ahead of Alabama. But it's because, again, it's a very slow climb for these smaller schools, and if they were to fall at any point, and I think the season goes on, Alabama is going to overtake UTSA, but at this moment, because UTSA has an additional win and doesn't have a loss, even though, again, strength production is absolute crap, they're going to be ranked ahead of against Alabama. And again, bringing back Coastal Carolina to this, if you're willing to say Coastal Carolina is ranked at 14 in the AP polls, why would it be crazy to say that UTSA, who has a better strength of schedule and better strength production than Coastal Carolina, couldn't be ranked number 13? I think that justifies UTSA. Kind of hard to justify this ranking, I know, but you have to look at the perspective of the team ahead of them is being rewarded for being undefeated again, and also because they have an additional win. That's really it. I think if Alabama was 7-1 versus UTSA being 7-0, Alabama would rank ahead. It's all data driven, guys. Another team. How is now San Diego State ranked ahead of Alabama? Similar story. Undefeated, being rewarded just simply for that. And, that's it. Not much more to say. This formula rewards you for being undefeated. And nothing more to say to that. Kentucky. Losing to Georgia, I continue to stand by saying Kentucky was very underrated. I know they were ranked number 11 in the AP polls last week. Now they dropped 4 spots to number 15. Are they underrated? Yeah, I think I can say that. I mean, their strength of schedule is pretty tough. It's, number 33. Strength of production is number 59. Their only loss is against the team we have ranked number 1 in the nation. Both the AP and the VP have rankings here. But, yeah, remember, look, they beat LSU, they beat Florida, they beat South Carolina, a lot of 4-3 schools, even the Division II school, which hurts them. But there's Missouri, UL Monroe. Oh, that's another thing I should mention. Going back to Alabama, a big thing that's going to hurt them is, look at this VPI score, right? The VPI rankings are ranked as an absolute 1, right? They're up to like 100%, right? Like, think of a score of getting like A up to -1. It could go all the way to 1, all the way down to -1 if you're looking at as far as percentages. So it's an absolute value of 1. So since Division II schools are treated as winless schools, they're treated as 0-12 and 100. I forget what the record is against their opponents. Opponents have this calculated. Also saying they're also treated after they had the worst total offense, total defense. So when you play one, it really hurts your ranking here, and that's a big difference between them and some of the teams that are ranked ahead of them. So yeah, you get punished really hard for playing against those teams, and you get punished even worse for losing against them, because again, they're treated as the worst team in college football. So that's a big explanation why Alabama's low as they are. One thing I was thinking of changing, and I think this might be more fair. It's something I have to structure in my database. Is I off the bat apply the 0-12 record with whatever amount of loss, 144 loss, whatever it is, up front, where other teams are accumulated wins and losses according to as the season goes on. So playing Division II school becomes more and more minimal as the season goes on, and it hurts you pretty brutally up early on when you play them. And I just need to structure my database where week by week it should be just like, instead of being 0-12 up front, it should be like 0-1 week 1, 0-2 week 2, until you get to the 0-12 and apply it that way. And that would probably move Alabama and a lot of the other schools higher. So I think that's why, some of these teams are ranked a lot lower than you would expect. But I think it's going to correct itself. Again, the more data we get, the more accurate this gets, especially when we get to the season's end. And if you're wondering why, like am I being dishonest or some present, I wouldn't say dishonest, because it's the data is going to be the same at season's end. That's why I have it structured this way. But leading up to the end of the season, it is going to affect rankings. So I'll have to, I don't know. I'll see if I adjust that, because, again, it's not a perfect, 12 weeks. You have, 14, 15 weeks of college football before you get into your conference championships and all that. So even how you distribute those losses to FCS schools, if I were to do it that way, and the manner I do it, I'd have to be careful about that as well. So I guess I'm going for simplicity here, but for the sake of transparency, I figured I'd share that. And yeah, Alabama probably would be ranked higher, and they will. As you guys, again, what I'm trying to lead up to is a final result at the end of the season, because I'm, of like who's deserving to be in the New Year's Six in the playoffs. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you guys think of how I should handle that. Probably should fix that, because I think it creates more shock value when going through these rankings. Because, look at this. I don't think it's fair. The more I think about this, even though I understand my thought process of why I would have it structured this way, having an end goal in mind of where I want these teams to be, according to the data that's entered. Yeah, I'll have to fix that, guys. Yeah, all right. Yeah, just thinking a lot loud there. Sorry for that, going to that. So anyways, Kentucky should be ranked higher. Ohio State, number 10. We are saying that in the AP polls, they are ranked number 5. 5-spot difference. That Oregon loss, is not the worst loss in the world to have. Great strength of schedule, number 17. Great strength of production. Middle of the road strength of production, number 60. But compared to some of the teams we're going to dive into right now, they just need a little bit more to really distinguish themselves to be a top 5 team. But yeah, Ohio State's on their way. Everything's Big Ten conference is a really tough conference. And look at that, number 1 total offense. So I think that's going to correct itself as the season goes on. Number 9, Wake Forest. Wake Forest, again, being rewarded here for being undefeated. Absolute garbage strength of schedule and really bad strength of production. They are the best team in the ACC, which is crazy to say. But they're riding a thin line. I think they lose one game, they'll just fall off the map here. But they were actually ranked number 7 last week. But as you're seeing, again, we get more data. It just starts correcting itself because they played a 3-4 Syracuse team. That's why they dropped in the rankings. Their biggest win being the 5-2 Virginia team. But each win has value. The more wins you accumulate, the better off you are. And when you don't lose, you don't get punished for those losses. So that explains the pecking order here. Not as drastic as it was last week, because they're number 16 in the rankings. So coming closer and closer to what the AP polls have. Number 8 with Notre Dame. Notre Dame, look at that. I think very underrated. They are moving up in the AP polls. They're number 13 there, or we're saying number 8, so should be ranked definitely a little higher. I mean, their worst loss is undefeated Cincinnati. Look at the strength of schedule. Top 10 strength of schedule. Number 4 strength of production. Really no signature wins. I mean, Purdue seems to be their biggest win. But, yeah, just tough, very balanced schedule overall. No, look at that. Not one team, well, sorry, except from Florida State. Only one team with a losing record. Everybody else has a either 500 or better record. Oh, I'm sorry, Toledo, too. Never mind. I should just shut up there. Anyways, we're just saying Notre Dame should be ranked higher. Number 7, Michigan State. Ranked number 9 in the AP polls. Ranked number 7 here. Ranked number 1 in your hearts. No. They had a win over Indiana this past weekend. Not much to say there. Look, just a really balanced schedule, and they're just undefeated. So the strength schedule number 116. Again, if you could say that, Michigan State should be a top 10 team with this bad strength schedule and a mediocre strength production, why can't Wake Forest, with a really similar resume, be a top 10 team? So this kind of shows how the AP polls kind of vote on things and how things are classified here. Keeping things consistent. If you're going to rank Michigan State as a top 10 school, Wake Forest should be considered as well. So that's all we're saying here. Iowa. Iowa was punished. How far did they drop? Number 11. Yeah, I think that was a bit too harsh because Purdue is not a bad school, and there's a lot to like. Am I surprised that Iowa lost against Purdue? Not really. As I mentioned, I've kind of respected Purdue all season. I think they've been a better school than people think. And it's not so much that. I mean, I wouldn't. If I were to put money and say which school is going to beat Iowa first, I wouldn't have said it would have been Purdue. I probably would have put money in Penn State, to be honest. But it was more concerning is that look at their total offense, 120, just absolute total offense. It's their defense alone that's carrying them, number 17 in total defense. But yeah, number 13 strength schedule, number 8 strength production. Big win over Penn State. Maryland, solid win. Iowa State, another solid win. So yeah, I think they're being judged way too harshly here, and I think that Iowa shouldn't have dropped as far down as they did. To drop from 9 spots, I think is a bit too harsh there. They're definitely deserving to be better. So yeah. Cincinnati, a team that was ripping, saying had no business being top 3 school, starting to earn their stripes. They are now 6-0. An okay, not great victory over the UCF. Again, the American Athletic Conference is the 4th best conference in college football. Right behind, the 5th best conference. Right behind the ACC, Big Ten, and Big 12, and this SEC conference. All those schools, all those conferences, we're seeing ranked ahead. Even actually the Mountain West, we're seeing the 6th best conference. Apologize there. I didn't mean to give you guys any misinformation there. So yeah, American Athletic Conference, 6th best conference. Not much to say in Cincinnati. They're just racking up wins and moving up the ranks. So ranked number 5 here, ranked number 3, number 2 in the AP polls. So interesting how, again, with this strength schedule and this strength production, you reward Cincinnati but not Wake Forest. So when you're looking at this, does it make more sense why, teams like Cincinnati would be number 2, teams like Michigan State would be ranked number 9 in the AP polls, but Alabama couldn't drop all the way down to 14, Looking at that logic, I think at first I was kind of looking at this, I'm like, am I wrong about Alabama? And then should I recalculate how I do Division II schools? Which I think I will look into, but still, looking at this, I feel better and better about how this data is ranking these teams. So, yeah, you know what? I'm not going to change things. I think this is pretty accurate. I think it's pretty consistent across the board because look at the logic of the AP polls. Look at how the data, which again I have no influence over whatsoever, just putting straight what the results are of these games and total offense, total defense. I think that this data is pretty consistent and applies the same logic across the board, where that logic doesn't seem to be shared with the AP polls. So let's keep this going here. Sorry about that. I had a big monitor going off. My wife is on it. Do not worry, guys. Oklahoma, keeping that crazy logic going. Defending why Alabama should rank number 14. Why Wake Forest should be ranked number 9 on here. So people don't think I'm crazy. We have Oklahoma. Oklahoma ranked number 4. Number 3 in the AP polls. Number 4 in the VPI rankings. But look at this, guys. Even though they're 7-0, look at that strength of schedule. Absolute crap strength of schedule. Even though I say the Big 12 is a good conference. They beat Division II school. They played a 1-5 Tulane. They beat a 2-4, West Virginia. Some of the wins aren't bad at all, with Texas and TCU and Kansas State. But strength production, middle of the road. Their total offense is great. Their total defense is okay. But looking at these stats, why would you have Oklahoma ranked so high, but not so much with some of the other schools we mentioned? Looking at SMU, looking at UTSA, looking at Kentucky, looking at San Diego State, looking at all that. Let's apply the logic. Same across the board, guys. Now, the team that's probably going to surprise you the most as far as how ranked they're high they are. Maybe not the most, but Oklahoma State, the better of the two Oklahoma schools, says these rankings, moved up 4 spots, had a big win over Texas, really rewarded for that. Against Texas, I think was been underrated for a lot of these this part of the season. But even though both Oklahoma and Oklahoma State play in the Big 12, my apologies. Even though they only have 8 schools or 10 schools, I don't even know. The math is all messed up here. None of these conferences know how to count except for the Pac-12. But they played Tulsa, which is obviously better than Tulane, right? And the schedule shows that. Beat Boise State, beat Kansas State. Baylor being a really big win for them. And then, of course, Texas getting both shares. So because they have a tougher strength schedule, because their strength production is way higher, even though their total offense isn't as good, their total defense is stellar. We're saying that Oklahoma State should be the top school in the Big 12, not Oklahoma. Both neck and neck there at between ranked number 3 and 4, respectively, VPI rankings. It's going to make a real interesting showdown between those two schools. I really do think that the winner of that game and who goes on to win out would be representing the Big 12 Conference. And I think don't sleep on the Cowboys. I was saying that last week when were ranked ahead. I don't sleep on them, guys. I'm telling you, they're good. Another team not to sleep on. If you've been watching this show, you know that I've been high on Michigan looking at these rankings. And they did drop a spot, but it's not anything that Michigan did. Obviously, they had a bye week, but they are undefeated. They have the number 15 strength schedule, number 7 strength production. Solid, really good offense, great defense, right? Obviously, their biggest win would be, looks like Northern Illinois. Western Michigan start off the season. So no really big wins. I think Wisconsin, again, is better than a lot of people think. But, Michigan Wolverines, we're saying here, should be ranked number 2 in the Big Ten. Should be the top school in the Big Ten. And you're seeing the AP polls starting to show that they've jumped up 2 spots in the rankings. So, starting to close the gap between what we have here in the VPI rankings and what we have with the AP poll. So, really, the only reason that Michigan dropped number 2 is because Georgia had a massive win over Kentucky, a team that I keep saying is very underrated and continues to be underrated. They beat Auburn. Look at this. Number 8 strength of schedule, number 13 strength of production. It is actually brutal. They have the number 1 total defense. Offense, okay, but it's all right. Defense wins championships, and that's why Georgia is ranked number 1. Very well deserving to leapfrog number 1. Total agreement between here in the AP polls. So if there's any justification for my craziness from rankings, again, the only team that you could really question here is Alabama. I think if you take away that, I think everything else is pretty accurate for the most part. I think the logic is consistent. When you look at Coastal Carolina, comparing that to the resume of San Diego State, UTSA, SMU, if you compare that to like where you're looking at Oklahoma, comparing them to to Alabama, comparing the logic there, being consistent across the board, I think these rankings are pretty accurate, and I think that when the playoff committee comes up with the rankings, there's going to be some changes, and I'll try to make some predictions leading up to that. So, yeah, that is our rankings for week 8. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Not as long-winded as other episodes. Still pretty long-winded, but didn't break an hour mark. I really want to appreciate you guys all for who tune in to watch. I know it's a mouthful, but if you guys ever want to join me in the discussions, head over to my Twitch channel. I am here every week. You'll get the notification. You jump on. We have a little discussion. I can convince you why your team's the best, why they the worst. We need to talk about any team you want. Have light discussions on that. Join me on Twitch. Sometimes do some gaming on there. But as for now, just having fun doing this. Thank you guys all for watching. We'll be back next week to cover these rankings. Hopefully, UCLA pulls off a victory over Oregon, and we'll see how that plays out, how it shakes up the top 25 rankings. Thank you again. Catch you guys next week. Good night, everybody.